In 1918, the German Empire collapsed in the wake of military defeat. From that chaos emerged the Weimar Republic, a democratic experiment that was fragile from its first day. The new state faced a split society. On one side, the old military and aristocratic elites remained in power, often working to undermine the republic. On the other, a desperate working class demanded the social and economic reforms promised by the revolution. The Constitution's proportional representation meant no party could lead. Parliament fractured into small factions, causing gridlock. To bypass this, Article 48 gave the president authority to pass laws by decree, ruling without Parliament's consent. This left the republic dependent on the cooperation of groups that actively despised one another. The result was a system under constant pressure, where the mechanisms of democracy were often used to bypass the democratic process. This instability was compounded by the Versailles Treaty, which saddled the young republic with massive financial reparations. When the government printed money to handle its debts, it triggered the hyperinflation of 1923. Life savings disappeared as the currency became worthless. Families watched their economic security transform into stacks of cash that children used as toys in the street. Foreign loans provided a brief period of recovery in the mid-1920s, but the 1929 Wall Street crash ended that stability. The German economy collapsed once more, leaving millions unemployed. With the economy in ruins, President Paul von Hindenburg and his advisors frequently invoked Article 48. They used emergency decrees to run the country, sidelining the parliament and centralizing power in the hands of the president. The NSDAP assumed control of a country where parliamentary authority had already been traded for presidential decrees and economic survival. The party took advantage of a political vacuum that had been growing for years. The collapse of the Weimar Republic demonstrates how economic desperation and the actions of anti-democratic elites can hollow out a democracy from within. After 1945, the nation cracked along a different line. The defeat of the Third Reich left Germany occupied by the victorious Allies, who eventually split the country into two separate states. West Germany integrated into the Western Bloc, developing a parliamentary democracy and a booming economy. In cities like Berlin, the streets filled with traffic and shops were stocked with the consumer goods of a new, prosperous middle class. East Germany became a Soviet satellite state. The GDR government restricted political freedoms and maintained a vast surveillance apparatus, but in return, it provided citizens with state-guaranteed housing, jobs, and social security. For decades, the two Germanys served as competing models for how to organize a society, pitting a consumer-driven democracy against a state-managed socialist system. The gap in living standards led to a crisis for the East. Hundreds of thousands of people, particularly the young and the educated, fled to the West in search of higher wages and political freedom. In 1961, the East German government moved to stop this exodus by building a physical barrier through the heart of Berlin. They trapped their population inside to ensure the state's continued existence. The Berlin Wall transformed the political rift into a physical barrier, severing streets and neighborhoods. It became a permanent fixture of the landscape, marking the absolute limit of the East's authority. When a state must use concrete and barbed wire to keep its citizens from leaving, it has lost the legitimacy to govern them. By the 1980s, the GDR was struggling. Its economy was failing to keep up with the West, and the Soviet Union's influence over Eastern Europe was beginning to recede. Dissent grew, organized largely through the East German Protestant churches. These peaceful gatherings grew into mass protests, with thousands of citizens marching openly through the streets of East Berlin to demand reform. In the fall of 1989, the pressure became overwhelming. The East German leadership, unable to rely on Soviet intervention and unwilling to use mass violence against its own people, finally gave in. On the night of November 9th, the border was opened. Berliners from both sides climbed the wall at the Brandenburg Gate, using hammers to chip away at the concrete that had divided them for 28 years. The collapse of the wall showed that state power cannot hold indefinitely when the population collectively decides to stop obeying. 1 year later, in 1990, East and West Germany were officially reunited as a single political nation. While the physical wall is gone, the unified nation continues to navigate the psychological and historical scars of the 20th century. This means confronting the crimes of the Nazi era and the surveillance of the East German state, histories that are now memorialized in the heart of the new capital. The institutions of the Weimar Republic failed because they lacked support from the people they were meant to govern. By 1989, the East German state faced the same reality, as a population once divided by concrete chose to rejoin as a single society.